up, everyone? How do you reset? That's the question. That's the question I got in a comment. And every once in a while, like I read these comments and sometimes I'm able to like comment on them or I think about them for a while. And this is one. It's one from Rick. It's like, he basically said, man, what happens if you're like getting all the dinks in the boat and all the big ones are coming off and at the end of the day, like you zero? How do you reset for like the next day? Man, so I thought about that, and the first time I read it, I kind of went in a different direction because I think it's kind of like two answers to this, right? Or two different scenarios maybe. One is, to me, when I first read it, it was like, if you lose a big one, like how do you reset that day, like in that moment? How do you like reset and keep on going after you just lost a big one, a giant, whether it's just fishing or in a tournament? Like how do you compose yourself again? And man, that's not an easy one. What happens is, and maybe this isn't the greatest thing in the world, but the more you fish, the more this is going to happen. It's just going to happen. It's always going to happen. It's never going to stop happening, right? And the problem is that like you have to figure out how to deal with it. And this is the way I've always dealt with it, is the more you fish and the more it happens to you, the more you have to realize that you have to keep going. And the bad problem is this: to get really good at doing that, you have to have a lot of bad things happen to you. And that's not the greatest answer, but it's kind of true. Since I've been doing this fishing thing for all these years, I have stories upon stories about losing fish, and not necessarily even losing fish. I don't get so upset about losing fish. I've had so many like weird things of like mechanical breakdowns, leading tournaments. There was a stretch there for a while, and I'll tell you all this story one day of how I was leading, like back then they were Costas or Everstarts, championships. Like I led like 4 tournaments, and they were 2-day events, leading the event and breaking down on day 2 and it costing me. Well, one of them, it didn't cost me. One of them I actually ended up only getting to fish half the day and still won. But man, losing a fish is nothing compared to that, when it's not even your fault, when you just break down, right? So losing a fish is one of those things where you probably know sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. It matters, like where I was just at the Red River. Like you lose a 3-pounder, there's a good chance you'll never get another 3-pound bite the rest of the tournament. So that's a big deal. You lose one on Rayburn or another lake, a 3-pounder, you lose a 5-pounder, and it's a big deal, yes, but you can come back from that. But you just gotta have to kind of like bite your tongue, sit there and go, okay. Because the more I pout, the more I do everything, the less I have a chance of catching another one, right? And that's my deal, is that like, all right, put that behind you and keep going. I know his question was different, because his question was more, well, okay, I did bad, you know, I lost all these, and now I got to go out there again, and now what do I do? A lot of times, especially if you zero, and say you're zeroing in a tournament, when you got to go out there the next day, you pretty much know that anything you do, and even if you catch them, you can't make it up. I've done this long enough to realize that like if you do that bad on day 1, it's hard on day 2. If you're just out there fun fishing, you got to always really step back and look at like what you're doing, what you've missed, and change it up. Because that's the deal. I'm doing this, I guess it's going to be a series. I don't know what I'm going to do. And it might just, it was about this tournament we just had on Lake Whitney. I'm going to go into this, and it's great because I have some buddies fishing this circuit as well. And this is why this all ties together, guys. And we rarely, I think me and my buddy Russell and Brent, they all fished separately. So there's 3 of us that all are pretty good friends, right? And so we'll talk, we'll share stuff. We know we might not ever go back to Whitney. That was my first tournament ever on Whitney. Brent's first tournament, Russell's second tournament ever. And we all fish all over Texas. And so we got on the phone and talked on the way home, and it was amazing how our stories and what we saw and didn't see, or things we heard or didn't hear about what we all did, and then tie them all together. And I thought we were on them, and we were on them, right? And some things happened, and we ended up still doing okay in the event. It was a weird deal. Brent and them were like beating us on day one with only 3, but they had 3 big ones. Russell had a big one on day one and were beating us, and ended up still beating us in the event by like a pound or 2. But how we all caught them, and then the things we learned. And what I mean by that is the timing on everything was incredible. The timing changed everything. Like the timing that they had figured out and that I had figured out, and baits I was catching them on, they were like, man, we threw it forever and never had a bite. And we talked about all this, and it was just crazy. So what happens is if you have a bad day, you might not necessarily be off. You just might not have it all dialed in. I thought I had it all dialed in. I mean, we thought we had everything figured out. And man, I was wrong. There were places where they caught them, and I was like, I fished there for like an hour or 2. We had 2 practice days. And I never saw anything with what y'all saw. They saw schooling fish, and I was like, I was around there all the time, and I never saw anything. It's just incredible what you can find out later, right? And that's not always easy. But you have to realize that even though you're out there and you think you're seeing everything, you're not. I mean, it's crazy to me, and I'm even here talking about it going, man, it's amazing what I missed and didn't see, and the things that happened. And so you got to step back, go, okay, I missed some things here. Something's not right, and you got to change and just think differently. Because a lot of times what will happen is we're so used to getting bit a certain way, and then like following up on that, right? Going along with that bite, like reading everything into it and expanding on that bite, and we get very one-track minded. And we're trying not to be, right? Because if you have all these like negatives, what I mean by negatives is like all these times you throw a bait or do something and you never get a bite on it, and you finally get bit doing over here, and every time you try to come back to the negative stuff, like it doesn't work, you just wash it away. Like, no, it's no good. And it's crazy because fishing will change in a blink of an eye. And it's just insane. So like, you got to just set back sometimes, really go over everything, and then think, okay, this is what I saw today. Now, what can I change? Not necessarily everything about tomorrow, but a lot of times when this is going on, you're thinking bait colors and like, okay, maybe I throw a different size crankbait. Man, no. I'm going way out there in the sense of you got to change your whole perspective on what you're doing. Like if you are going really slow, maybe you need to speed up. If you're speeding up, and when I mean speed up, not your bait, like your boat, like you covering water. You got to hit things in the mornings or in the afternoons and try them different times. I mean, rarely am I ever talking bait stuff. Baits, I think, are way overrated to a degree. And here's why. And this is a whole nother conversation, but I'll throw this in there. Fishing tournaments let you realize that they eat a bunch of baits, right? Because there's a bunch of guys out there in a tournament, say 100 guys, and 75 of them catch fish. They weren't all throwing the same thing, okay? So if I always love it when you're like, oh man, they're only eating this bait. Well, 74 other guys caught them on another bait. And so no, they are eating other baits. They're just not eating other baits for you. So like I said, think more about what you're trying to accomplish rather than a bait or a color or things like that. You might just be going about everything the wrong way, with the wrong timing, or how fast you're doing it, or how slow, stuff like that. So that's how you reset. You have to come back in and go, okay, something's wrong. I wasn't looking at it right. Let's try to change it up, okay? Now, the second one, if anyone stayed on this long, is this one. And this is an easy one for me. I'm going to answer this question. That was all the logical way. Okay? That's the logical way of the way a lot of people look at it, or would try to look at it, or it's going to help them make sense. It does for me a little bit. Okay? But here's my way. Just throwing this out there. You know, I've always had a pretty good temper, being able to control it. And so I never get too crazy out there on the water when I lost a fish. I would always try to get back going, you know, get right back in the game. And I was always pretty good about that. And I think I've even gotten a lot better, but I've had to come to terms with some things. And this is what happened. I started realizing that no matter how bad I wanted it, it really didn't matter how bad I wanted it, right? And so what I mean by that is I started leaving a lot of things in the Lord's hands, right? And so I had to accept the fact that things were going to happen, and He had a better plan for me than my plan. Because, man, I like to plan everything out in fishing. I like to, like we all do, right? Especially if we're fishing tournaments. Man, I'm trying to figure out, like, I know where I want to go and the timing of everything, and I have it all put together, right? I have all this stuff, and I put it all together, and I think about it all night long. And then sometimes He can totally mess up that plan. And I started realizing that, okay, this is crazy, He might not really want me to have done good in this tournament, or He might would have wanted me to. There was a reason this didn't happen. And I don't know what that reason is, but I've come to accept that a lot easier because I know He's taken care of me for all these years. So for me, it's very easy for me to be like, okay, it is what it is, and I just keep going. Because a lot of times, man, nothing great happens. Like, that fish will end up costing me a check, costing me a cut, a lot of different things. And I've learned to be like, okay, I've done this for so long. There's a reason. And I just go home. Maybe it's He needed me to get home to my family. I don't know what it is, but it's okay. So I still get upset. It still somewhat bothers me, but I'm able to accept it way quicker and way easier. And I don't let it like dig down deep inside for long. And because, man, I started learning too when I was younger, if you take that home with you, I mean, that'll eat you up inside in fishing. And fishing isn't fun anymore. Like, it gets too much. And so that's what I've done. I've just learned to accept it and go on, because I also am able then to accept all the great things that He's given me and all the great times that I have caught Him and all that. So, like, there's always going to be that, right? We're losing fish. You're going to lose fish. You're going to have some bad tournaments. You're going to have some things not go your way. So it's kind of how you bounce back from that. I always shake my head when I'm out there and some guy loses a fish and I hear throwing rods and cussing and doing all that stuff. I'm going, man, I don't really know. I don't get that part of it, to be honest with you. I just, if y'all have seen my videos, man, I'll lose one and I go back to casting. I mean, usually never say a word, and that's just what I do. A lot of good things have happened on that next cast. I'm just telling you. So I try to get back into the game instantly. I don't want to waste 5 minutes sitting there throwing my rod down, causing a big fit, looking like, looking like whatever out there. So that's my advice. There was two little different deals. Some will understand the logical way. A lot might not understand this other way. I can tell you one thing. The last way, man, that's the easiest one for me to accept. Easy. It's easy. I mean, I can smile about it right now because, like, man, if you know, you know, and it's an easy way to go about life, man. And so it makes a lot more sense. Logical people that like that other way, they might not understand that, but to me, this makes total sense. So it's easy for me. So I hope that helps. Rick, that question was from Rick. Good question, Rick. Loved it. Anyways. See you guys. Oh, I think the next video I'm going to do is time on the water. Time on the water in Hawaii. It's way overrated. Way overrated. Depending on how you look at it. This one's going to be a fun one. This one might be a long one. because like I like that one. That's a good one. Time on the Water, guys. All right.